This is Design for How People Learn book review by Christopher Montalvo. Design for How People Learn by Julie Dirksen. This book is designed for people who like to read, first and foremost. It is comprised of 9 chapters that help guide learners on how to enable learning for competence. Design for How People Learn explains key principles behind learning, memory, and attention. So, about the author, Julie Dirksen. She is an independent consultant and instructional manager. She obtained her MS degree in instructional systems technology from Indiana University. She has over 15 years experience in creating lots of interactive e-learning experiences for Fortune 500 companies. Lots of people seek her for her expertise in the field. Um, some of her main focuses in the field are in the field of neuroscience, educational psychology, persuasive technology, and change management. So, design for how people learn really helps with people understanding that memory relies on encoding and retrieval. Learning designers need to think about how material gets into long-term memory and about how learners can retrieve that data later. Um, Learners are coming up with a constant flow of input, and the material needs to be significant for it to attract the learner's attention. Um, a lot of people have material that's very monotonous. So the learning design needs to uh, not be repetitive and fall into that monotonous area. Working memory has its limits. It's easy to overwhelm new learners. So the material should be limited or chunked um, into information that is more manageable. People hold items in their working memory only as long as they need for a specific purpose. So once that purpose is has been satisfied, they usually forget. So it's important to ask the learners to do something with that information so they can retain it longer in their long-term memory. Organization of long-term memory, it has a huge impact on the learner's ability to retrieve material. So the material that is easier to retrieve if it's grounded and if it's rich in context. Matching emotional context of what's being learned to emotional context of retrieval, it greatly improves the likelihood that the learner will be able to get that material and store it and remember it later on. Storytelling is a good way to um, bring up an existing experience. Uh, Therefore, information that is given in story form, it's easier to retain than other types. Repetition, memorization, it usually works to encode information in long-term memory, but it's a very limited strategy. It's a strategy that can be tedious for learners. It doesn't really provide very many pathways for retrieval, um, and there are many different types of memory. And a big way to do that is to understand that using those types of memory can improve the likelihood that material is retained. So, what I found to be important about design for how people learn is that uh, it really targeted people who love to read. I mean, this book has everything. It has stick figure drawings, little bubbles with people, people with bubbles above their head that they're talking, and it has a lot of real life objects in it that relate to the material that it's talking about. It does a really good job of keeping the reader engaged. It doesn't just talk about the successful learning design; it shows it. It shows it as well. Julie Dirksen encourages thinking in new ways and tells stories that are both hypothetical and also from her own personal experience. And that really helps the reader to better relate, to better understand what is being read. This book, it covers basics from the beginning, how to get started, to the cognitive foundations of learning, and then into how to successfully incorporate design strategies. One of the biggest key principles that the book covers is how to develop a learner centric approach. Um, so readers, they're constantly reminded to consider who their target audience is. It is so important to understand who you're designing for. If the target audience, for example, if the target audience is motivated by extrinsic factors, then it is important to avoid extensive theory and background in order to keep the reader engaged and focused. Another key principle that the book covers is how that specific content is taught, how it's presented. It is so very important when designing learning experiences to concentrate on what learners already know, and it's very important to also to show them rather than tell them, so they can come up with their own conclusion themselves. So in the end, in conclusion, Design for How People Learn, it is a great book, not just for beginning learning designers, but it can help experienced learning designers as well. It really focuses on its most main important factor is that the designing learning experiences um, is seriously having to focus mainly on the learners, their wants, needs, experiences, limitations, expectations, abilities. We are in a world that is constantly changing, upgrading, and updating, and it's so important to have uh, learning experiences that are centered around the people who are learning, experiences that are engaging, exciting, and that's it.